live edition of the Patriots Beat Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. Pat's Pulpit's Brian Hines here, as always, with Alex Barth from 98.5 The Sports Hub. And happy training camp eve, everyone, because tomorrow kicks off on-field work at Gillette for the New England Patriots for training camp this summer. But they were at the facility today for their conditioning tests, so things to talk about because Bill Belichick met with the media, along with David Andrews, Matthew Slater, and Juwan Bentley. They all met with the media today. So we can jump right into it with Bill. And he shared with us who was there. And there were some big notable names there participating for really the last 4 days. He said Jack Jones was here with his legal case, still in question, but he is in the building. He's to participate. And then Trent Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, after missing a lot of the spring, they've been in the building. Bill said the last 4 days, and they're ready to go. So some good news on that front from who's ready here when we'll kick off the on-field stuff tomorrow.
Yeah, it's getting real. Football's almost back. We're getting the rain out of the way now, which is great. Yep. So we'll be nice and dry out of practice, and we're here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. They saved the 4 days of the week for us, though.
Oh yeah, no, it's going to be it's going to be quite the just hydrate, bring your water, bring your Gatorade tomorrow.
As always. So I guess with those players that are there, we kind of assumed Jack Jones would be here at this point because waiting until that August 18th date when he's back in court. Obviously, Bill wouldn't speak anymore about the legal case because it's an ongoing process. I thought Matt had some good comments that, you just want to listen and see what you can do to help him at this point. But so that was expected. But the big ones to me, Trent Brown and Juju and Bill threw Tyquan in there as well, because what we've mentioned a lot is, especially a guy like Trent Brown, that's factor on this offense, right? You need him to at least hold down one tackle spot, because then you say you can just figure out that other spot. But if you don't, then you're really got to figure out, we call it like 34 games of 2 tackle spots, which that can get shaky. So good to see he was in there and 4 days. So it seems like he's kind of locked in and ready to go here for tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's encouraging. We know, we've seen on social media, he's been at the facility, and he's the guy. I don't feel great about their tackle situation either way, honestly. And we know his injury history just because he's out there now. We'll see if he can get through 17 games, but it goes from bad to potentially unsalvageable if they lose Trent Brown. So that he's in the building, he's in shape, he's doing well. That's a good sign. Like you said, Juju and Thornton as well. We've talked a lot about their depth or lack thereof at wide receiver, and we'll get into the signing they made. And I don't think it impacts that a ton, but that those 2 guys seem ready to go as well. Look, we'll see tomorrow. We'll see what they look like. Are they under red non-contact jersey, etc. But definitely encouraging to hear that some of these guys that, I think we came away from the spring, we said 2 of the biggest disappointments were we didn't see Juju, we didn't see Trent Brown, we didn't get to see what they're going to bring to the table this year. And it sounds like that's not going to continue into the start of training camp here.
Yep. So we should get our first kind of real look at how that offensive line unit shakes out to start here, right? Obviously, the competition dial up and the jobs are going to be won at that right tackle spot, or maybe Brown gets bumped back to that right tackle spot and a guy like Calvin Anderson takes that left tackle job. But just good to see. And you mentioned red jerseys. We should get our first look. I know someone just brought up Antonio Mafi in the comments. He was red jersey sprain, right? Marte Mapu in that same case. So we should get a better look at some of the health here. And then who the pup was, Mike Unwin Davis, and who was the last name? I'm forgetting it.
Marte Mapu, Cody Davis, and Justice Tavai.
Justice Tavai on the pup, so we won't get to see them. So sticking with that offensive line, we'll have some maybe competition at right guard, which could lead to Onwenu bump when he returns if one of those guys really performs well at that spot.
Yeah, and that sucks because that's something, we talked about this that I wanted to look for, is Onwenu going to get any time at right tackle, and we have to continue to go on this. I don't know, because we'll see. He can get activated at any point, and there's been times in the past where they've put guys on PUP and then they're out there for the first day of practice, and it was just a one-day thing. I don't think that's going to be the case with Onwenu, because usually that's the case for guys who fail their conditioning test, but I do. How much does he miss? As long as he's back by joint practices, I think they're in good shape. That's really kind of the cutoff for me.
I'd agree with that. And then, Juju, Taekwon, Bill, a little bit on the defense. We mentioned Juwan Bentley, Taylor step in the communication process without Devin McCourty. He kind of downplayed that after. He's like, I've been the mic, I've worn the dot before, but
right.
Kind of expected there with Bentley. And Slater said he gave the team the speech, let's move on, nothing else matters. So Bentley, kind of as we expected with that conch, and kind of taking a step up in the leadership department too this year, as well as, his play has elevated every year he's been on the field too. So a growing role there for him.
Yeah, it was interesting too that he downplayed it. I found that interesting that he was like, no, it's what I've been doing, because I think he just seems like the kind of guy that takes pride in that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think he wants it, like, he doesn't want to be seen as new to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then anything else from Bill kind of stick out with you? Those were like the people that was there was kind of the big ones to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So I thought it was notable. He reiterated again that they don't really evaluate until the pads come on. And even when they do, it's the 11-on-11 practices. So this is going to be a continuation of the teaching period here the next couple of days. It's actually, I think it's not until the 7th practice now that they can get in pads. It used to be the 4th, but I think under the new CBA, there's a couple of days in shells, but the pads don't come on until the 7th day of practice. I thought that was interesting. Oh, the Jack Jones update. That, he was asked kind of point blank, he was asked point blank, are you going to stand by Jack Jones? He said he's going to be out there practicing. At this point, if they were going to cut him, they would have cut him.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring him out to practice while you're still, it would be one thing if he wasn't going to practice and he was still on the team. That would tell me, well, his future's still up in the air. They don't know, and they don't want to put him out there if they think something's going to come out. Whereas the fact they're going to put him out there and he's going to practice makes it seem to me like they're good with whatever happened at Logan, whatever is going to happen with his defense and all of that. They are good with it. They feel like the worst is behind them, and they are going to keep him as a part of the team. So I thought that was certainly notable that Bill, and that's all he said. He was asked he was asked his personal reaction to it. He was asked another question about Jones' future, and he said he can't comment on it because it's an ongoing legal process, but to even mention specifically that Jack Jones is going to be out there, I thought was notable. And that tells me that they're still with him.
They're counting on him. And speaking of the offensive line and injuries here, we just got some 3 rosters on the spot here.
Okay.
Mike Reese. We have Calvin Anderson opening training camp on the non-football illness list, along with Marcus Mitchell, defensive end special teamer DeMarcus Mitchell, and then Justice Tavai was removed from the PUP list, so he is good to go for tomorrow. But there we go. You lose another offensive tackle right out of the way. So some last-minute roster shuffle there before they take the field tomorrow. Anything there immediately for you?
Well, the tackle position, again, no Calvin Anderson, so we're not going to get a full look at it even as Trent Brown comes back. And that's interesting. And that's a guy that needs to be out there. That's a guy that needs a full summer, and you got to see where he's at if he's going to make a push to play left tackle. So that's a little bit concerning. Anything with the tackle position at this point pretty much is concerning.
Bad.
and you can add that one to the list.
But it's just it's not injury. So maybe it's just something short. And then
yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, hopefully he doesn't miss a lot of time, but I think it's still notable that, again, he's missing time.
Yeah. And then DeMarcus Mitchell, kind of like that saying, like, competition. He faces a lot of special teams competition because in a defensive end, defensive line, linebacker room, you assume he's going to have to make that mark on special teams, which is where he spent most of the time last year. So the fact to miss some time here might not be the best start, but again, it's, as you said with Bill, it's the continuation of the spring here. So maybe he won't miss too much competition on this list too. So maybe he can get back pretty quickly there.
Who is the illness list? He has Mitchell as the injury list.
His tweet. He was okay.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
There Anderson.
DeMarcus Mitchell's on the injury list. He played through the end of last year. I don't remember him getting hurt last year.
Yeah. So maybe that was an off-season thing.
Unless I'm forgetting something.
Did he get hurt the Week 18 game against a special teamer there? Maybe it was, but maybe it was just.
I remember that's the game on when who got hurt. Hang on, I'm pulling up their injury report from last year. Oh no, this is this year's. That's not going to work. Yeah, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yep. So we'll see with that if we'll get any updates. We speak to them Thursday before practice, so nothing right out of the gate, but we'll see there. But they did make roster moves the other day, the 90-man roster. Diego Fago from Navy, who just screamed Patriot from the get-go. And then Hurd, who was pretty much a wild card. He was a 2019 third-round pick. He was a running back, started in college, transitioned to he transferred to Baylor. So I kind of thought they might put him back at running back because they needed some depth there. You know, they're kind of still, but we asked Bill today, and he said they're going to play him at receiver. So he hasn't played a snap since he got drafted in 2019 in the third round. So, you know, just a camp body, it seems. We'll see what happens. But, you know, 2 roster additions here on the back of the roster before to round out the 90.
Yeah, real quick on Diego Fago, like you said, I absolute Patriot. I had him on my draft watch list going in last year. 6'2", 240, plays incredibly physically, pure downhill linebacker, maybe has some potential to play a reserve role in early downs, but he's a special teams player. If he's going to make the roster, he's got to carve out a core role on special teams. And like you mentioned, DeMarcus Mitchell missing time, that potentially opens a door. Very smart player, so we'll see what kind of role he carves out. That's a guy I'm more so looking for. He's definitely the kind of guy I can see them keeping on the practice squad because he's going to be able to do a number of things, and just having him around and maybe he gets elevated once or twice. Hurd is more interesting, and I didn't get a chance to ask Belichick this today. The press conference ended before I could, but I'd be curious how they evaluated him because he's played like 2 preseason games, and that's it since he got drafted, and he only played 1 year wide receiver in college. I almost wonder if he's a hybrid tight end.
Because he's like 6'4",
and again, here we go again with these 6'5". So he's listed at 227 last time he measured in, which was 2 years ago. I've heard that he, you know, as part of, he was out of the league last year, and part of that was he had 3 injuries in 3 years. He had a back injury his rookie year. He then tore his ACL the next year. And in 2021, he had an undisclosed knee injury. It might have been related to the ACL. Like, I don't know. But he was out of the league last year, and part of what he did is get his body in better condition, and supposedly he bulked up a little bit. So if he comes in at close to like 6'5", 230, 235, now you're talking about maybe a move tight end, which would be interesting. And it's important how Bill was asked that question. Do you plan on playing him at running back or receiver? Bill said receiver, but tight end wasn't a part of the question. So receiver's obviously closer to running back than tight end is. I'm not saying like they're going to put him out there over Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki or anything, but it's going to be interesting. But to me, mainly like he's in the competition now for that 5th wide receiver role with Booty and Douglas and Trey Nixon and Edley. Like he's in there. He definitely brings significant size. He might be their second best option as a true X behind Parker. Now that's a very significant drop off. And yet he's not a guy that has a lot of skill. He's big. He's got great athleticism, but he's only played the wide receiver position essentially for a year, and he hasn't played football for the most part in 4 years. So he's incredibly raw technically. But we'll see. Maybe his athleticism is enough to get him over the hump. He's going to be a fascinating player to watch. And then it's just a matter of him staying healthy, too. He has to stay healthy. But this is a guy that was a top 100 pick. This is a 3rd-round pick by the Niners in that 2019 wide receiver draft, that infamous 2019 wide receiver draft. By the way, N'Keal Harry had a workout with the Eagles today. And there's something there. And, 4 years later and a back and 2 and what's left. But for the 90th man on the roster, not a terrible signing. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a great signing because I think this is their idea of investing in the wide receiver position, just kind of going for long shots and hoping one hits. I would have rather them sign DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, but for what it is on its own, not a bad signing.
Yep. And just another guy with like that versatility, right, for the offense. And
Yeah.
the tight end's interesting because I just looked it up while you were little Jordan Humphrey was 6'4", 225. So that's like right in
And
that
by the way,
same
just real quick,
range.
this is notable. The Patriots officially signed Jalen Hurd. They announced it, and that's notable because it means he passes physical.
Yep. So he's healthy, at least
Yep.
for the moment.
Healthy enough to pass physical.
So yeah, that'll be interesting how they plan to use him. Again, they said receiver, but maybe it's that kind of little Jordan Humphrey role. And I don't know how much special teams experience I mean, again, he had like 50 something snaps in 2 preseason games throughout his career. So really raw, really, but the traits are there and the versatility's there. So we'll see how that kind of transpires. And then Diego, do you think there's anything there with a fullback role coming back, or we'll kind of start to
I
see
don't
the
think
pads come
so.
on? But
So the play you're talking about is there was a play in Army Navy 2 years ago that he picks up a first down. It was not actually a fake punt. It was a bad snap that happened to go right to him. I forgot about
really
that when I
bad
sent that
snap.
tweet out. Yeah. Could he do it? Yeah. Again, he's a strong guy who likes to throw his body around, and that's pretty much a fullback. That's the 90% of the position. Could he do it? Yes, but I think if they were going to have a fullback, they would have had a fullback at this point. They would have
Already.
had a fullback with them in the spring when they were installing the offense. Maybe late in the year, they get down on the goal line, they try something down there, like they put something in late in the year for like, hey, we just need a play on the goal line. Like I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but I wouldn't expect Diego Fago to be getting multiple meaningful offensive snaps at any point for this team. I just think that's a long shot. As much as I want to see it, I do want to see it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a real long shot that we see Diego Fago play offense for this team.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He seems like, if he's here, he's going to be a special teams guy from the start, and then
I'll
maybe
say
something.
again, if there is a guy they're going to experiment with like that, I think it's Keon White. If there's a guy they're going to bring over, not Marcus Jones, but like if there's a guy they're going to bring over in like a blocking muscle role from the defense, it's Keon White, who was a tight end for 2 years in college. And it's a similar skill set, like offensive and defensive lineman. You're sort of, it's all leverage. Like it's not the same thing, but it kind of is. It's 2 branches of the same tree, kind of the skill set at a basic level for offensive defensive linemen. So if you need a defensive lineman to give you a couple snaps as a run blocker, those guys are generally pretty well set to do it. The ones who really understand what they're doing technically. So if there is going to be one of these, like Landon Roberts, I don't know, I couldn't think of his name. Remember Landon Roberts started playing fullback after Devlin got hurt that year. If you're going to see something like that, where a guy on defense all of a sudden starts playing fullback, it's Keon White. It's not going to be Diego Fago.
Yeah,
But not that Keon White's going to do it either. I think I just Bill O'Brien doesn't use the traditional fullback. I'd be surprised either way, but I would expect Keon White before I'd expect Diego Fago.
He'd probably be in like that J.J. Watt tight end, Mike Vrabel tight end role, like at the goal line maybe. But if they don't keep a third and they want another big body down there who can maybe threaten defenses, that would kind of be intriguing. So I'd agree White would probably be the leader in that right now. So
yeah.
But we'll see there. I thought there was a comment I wanted to bring up, but can't find it. So, that was pretty much it from Bill, I think. That was all the roster moves lately.
Yeah, I think we got to everything. Yeah.
There was one thing I did want to bring up, because we were kind of talking about it last week in our training camp preview, and then it dropped Thursday or Friday, was they updated the player weights. And there were a few noticeable ones, and the one we were really talking about last week was Marte Mapu, right? How undersized he is at that position. How can he handle contact? And they updated him to 230, right, instead of 216. So
yeah,
that will be kind of interesting to watch here, how he handles the contact and that athleticism going sideline to sideline after he put on 14, 15 pounds here.
Yeah, I want to pull up my full list because there's a couple of players I want to talk about. I forgot we haven't done a show in like a week. I forgot we hadn't done a show since that happened. So now the conversation changes. Now the conversation becomes, how well does he move at that size? Because anytime you put mass on, and look, he needed to put mass on. I'm not saying this to knock him or knock them or anything like that. Like, he needed to put weight on, and he did, and that's good. And there's an equilibrium, right? You put on too much weight, you're not going to be explosive. guys were just as explosive at 300 pounds as they were at 200 pounds. Every corner in the league would be 300 pounds because it's more mass. It helps you win physically. So the question, and 15 pounds, 14 pounds is not a ton, but that's notable. I think that's a notable addition. So the question is now, how well does he move at that size? Because if he's just as explosive as that at that size, now we're really talking. Now this is a legitimate NFL money backer, and you can really start having some fun with that. If it slows him down a little bit, how much? Is it enough to matter? Is it not? So yeah, him playing in contact for any rookie, you want to look at him playing in contact. I'm not saying that rules that out, but how well is he moving? I think becomes a question. And the Patriots do a really good job. I talk about this all the time. I think their medical staff, their training staff is
awesome,
unbelievable at what they do. And it's, they put work into this. They're not just like, you need to be bigger, go eat 10 stacks of pancakes. They figure out and they work with the player. This is a weight we realistically think you should play at for these reasons. And this is the way you should put the weight on, right? Because there's different ways to put weight on: fat, muscle, all of it. So I'm sure there's a reasoning behind that 230. I'm sure it's distributed a certain way, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of the end product of all of that.
Yep. And another player who was kind of like that was Demario Douglas. He put on 22 pounds, 170 up to 192. And that's a guy where a lot of his game is, that jitterbug splot explosiveness. So put it on 22 pounds. How's that going to look? Is that going to look the same in kind of that same format as Mapu there?
So that one's a little more jarring because it's the relative size, right? You're adding 14 pounds at 216 versus adding 22 pounds at 170. But again, it's that same thing where you're looking, how does he carry the extra weight? Is he just as shifty? Marcus Jones fits into this category as well. He put on 14 pounds. And it's something I think he needed to do. It's going to help him a lot on defense as a tackler. It's going to help his durability, but obviously his shiftiness is a big part of his game. And that's going to matter. A couple other things I don't know if you had any other guys in that list you wanted to touch on. I've got a couple.
I had like Devon Godchaux, 19 pounds, maybe more of a traditional nose tackle role this year, if they're planning to do that. Kendrick Bourne, he told us he bulked up 15 pounds to 205. Rodney Randall putting on 35 pounds. I just was kind of wild, but
that's awesome. Like, shout out to him. He went up and he's played 170. He's been in the NFL since 2019 playing at 170, and now he's at 205. My theory on that one is he's going to be playing safety. He maybe thinks, or the team thinks, that his path to a roster spot is playing safety, or even just like a more involved special teams role. And special teams is as physical as it gets. You've got to have more bulk. So something like that, guy who's been in the league multiple years, putting on that much weight, who's a fringe player, that tells me I think there's some sort of position change coming for him.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he'll make the team. Like, I still don't think he makes the team, but maybe that helps him get on the practice squad. Again, I go back to that special teams thing. He definitely is in better shape to contribute on special teams now.
Mm-hmm. And then someone asked Tyquan Thornton. He only put on 3 pounds. Cole Strange.
Yeah, his weight change is notable in that there isn't one.
Yeah. Cole Strange kind of in that same. He only put on 5, which is someone we were talking about maybe needs to, we called it the Joe Tooney plan a lot, put on some mass, because he got pushed around at times by some of those bigger, more physical defensive tackles last year and had some issues with them. So not much in the weight gain in those two. I don't know if you had anyone else that kind of caught your eye that we didn't discuss.
Yeah, just a couple more. Gesicki actually trimmed down from 250 to 245, which, is he going to be more wide receiver responsibilities? That lines up. Shalani Tavaya bulked up 9 pounds. Maybe he's kind of entering that defensive edge size now, defensive end side, which is probably about right. And then I thought this one was really interesting. Mac Wilson, 13 pounds from 233 to 246. He's now built more like Juwan Bentley than he is Marte Mapu. I wonder if their plan is to have him play downhill more and not as much in that money back role, because he was supposed to be, we thought he was going to be Marte Mapu's backup as that athletic middle linebacker, but to play that role at 246, that's a lot. That's a big guy to be flying around sideline to sideline. So, he seems like a guy that just wants to get in the gym and get huge. Maybe it was that, but that's it. Given he's a guy that didn't play on defense the second half of last year, so he kind of seemed to be on the outs of the coaching staff, and now he's undergone, significant weight, not significant weight gain, but, relatively speaking, 13 pounds. It's a lot for an NFL player where every single pound is managed. That one just stood out to me as well.
Yeah. And Bentley's only listed at 244. So he's actually heavier than Bentley.
Oh, so Bentley came down. I must have missed that because I have Bentley at 250. Bentley's been talking about how he wants to do more in coverage and be better in coverage.
So he wasn't on the list that was going around Twitter. I had the roster here. He's the OTA roster. So he was 244, 6'2", 244, and max 6'1", 246 now. So yeah, kind of a reverse of roles there. So we'll see how that kind of develops. We'll get our first look when the pads come on.
And then just Mac Jones put on some weight too. I don't think it was a lot. It was like 4 or 5 pounds, but
six pounds, 220.
6 pounds. All right.
Yeah.
That's probably, he wasn't like oversized to begin with. So I think that's fine.
Yep. So that was all I had in the weight department there, Weight Watchers, but should we do?
Right, so let's check in with our friends at FanDuel, and then do we want to take questions? Did we have something else?
We can do some questions and then the Boston Sports Minute.
All right, yeah, we do need to save time for the Boston Sports Minute today.
I'm
getting ripped on Twitter right now. I need to set the record straight. But so put your questions in the chat ahead of training camp. But first, a word from FanDuel.
Your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times. It's 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets and up to $200. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to be, hitting the first home run. All in the app that's safe, secure, it's super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston. And get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
All right. You ready to take some questions?
Yes. Let's jump into it.
So we kind of talked about this off the top. If you want to rewind, will Jalen Hurd get snaps at running back, maybe even tight end? I don't think running back, and I meant to mention this before. I know they filled up the roster, right? And we're all like, oh, they got their 90-man roster set for camp. They make moves through the first week or two of camp. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I think LJ Humphrey was signed like 3 or 4 days into camp last year. Somebody was.
Yeah, he was late.
Somebody was who made a late roster push. So I don't think they're done. I do think they end up bringing in a running back, call it before joint practices start. So I don't think Hurd is like the answer at running back depth. Tight end, maybe. That's going to be interesting to watch. But I don't know that he would get snaps at tight end. Like, I don't think he's going to be with his hand in the dirt, next to the tackle. I think he could get some tenacious blocker, bigger ball, route tree type things. Maybe they use him in more obvious running situations like they did with Lil Jordan Humphrey last year. I don't think he's the same player as Lil Jordan Humphrey. He's much more athletic. But I could see some tight end type stuff. I don't think they're going to play him at running back. I think if they want a running back, they're going to add another true running back, which I do think they do call it the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. I think if he's getting carries, it's just jet sweeps, reverses, that type of stuff. Get him the ball and some speed.
Yeah, you might see some of that. Yeah. I was talking to somebody today. It's funny. Brian, you're a college football guy. See how deep of a college football guy you are. Do you remember a guy named Jordan Myers from Rice?
It sounds familiar.
So
yeah,
he played for Rice. He was in the draft 2 years ago. Rice horrible, but they had a joint pro day with Houston, and the Patriots were there, and I think the Patriots were watching this kid. 6'2", 220, listed as his last year had like 9, and they just used him as he played everywhere. And he kind of similar skill set, Jalen Hurd, not nearly as athletic, not as big, but I remember like the Patriots at the time, they gave him half a glance. I don't know how much it was, but they gave him half a glance leading up to the draft. And I thought, that kind of player is an interesting idea. So maybe it's back to that. And meanwhile, Jordan Myers didn't even sign as a UDFA. I don't think he's played in the XFL or the USFL. I don't know what happened to him. But I don't know. For a minute there, I thought he was a very interesting player once upon a time. If Demario Douglas pops, would they put him in the slot instead of Juju? I don't think he's going to pop to that level right away. If he does, yes. If he's their best slot receiver, they're going to play him in slot receiver. I still think he's a gadget player in year one, though.
Yep. I'm still in that Marcus Jones offensive role. I think that's where it would be the perfect fit for him in this first year here.
I also think that at that point they might just move Douglas to Z and go with Juju and Douglas on the field. At that point, if he's playing that well, they're going to figure out a way, or put Juju at the Z or something. Like, it's good. It would be taking Bourne or Thornton off the field at that point.
Yeah.
I think if Douglas is playing that well, which, I mean, wouldn't be again, they need speed. And that's why we've talked about it being so important that Thornton wins that Z spot. But if Douglas is as fast as Thornton, I think. So if you can get the speed on the field, it's not the way we thought, but you can get the speed on the field. All right. Do we see Christian Gonzalez winning Defensive Rookie of the Year? He's got to have a monster year, just because this always defaults to a front seven player. I don't remember who the last defensive. I guess Sauce won it last year. But before that, I think it had been a while. I'm going to pull it up because I'm sure I'm making myself an idiot right now. And there's more than I remember, but it's like Defensive Player of the Year. Remember when Gilmore won it? It was such a big deal.
Yeah.
Because
it's tough.
No defensive back had won it.
It's tough to put up the stats in the secondary,
right,
compared to a front seven player. I pulled it up quick over on FanDuel. Gonzalez is the fifth best odds for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and it's Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson. So 3 straight front seven players, and then Devon Witherspoon is 4th, and then Gonzalez at that plus 1100. So
Gonzalez should be the favorite at cornerback. I think he's a better player than Witherspoon is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get the idea there. So going back, so Gardner won it last year. Before him, Micah Parsons, linebacker, Chase Young, defensive line, Nick Bosa, defensive line, Shaq Leonard, linebacker. Then you have Marshawn Lattimore, Joey Bosa, Marcus Peters. So you have 3 defensive backs in the last, whatever that is, 8 years, 9 years, going back to 2015. And then to find the next defensive back, you got to go all the way to 1998 in Charles Woodson. So you're talking about almost 20 years there. And look, it's happened more often recently, but these awards really tend to go to front seven players. So he's got to be, again, Sauce was so impressive last year. And you could make an argument it actually should have been Tariq Woolen, but the two of them were so unbelievably impressive last year. I don't think any pass rushers from that class really popped, unless I'm forgetting something.
No, I don't think so.
Why am I forgetting the pass rushers in that class? But it wasn't a great year. Travon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson kind of fell off late in the year. Kayvon was in and out. So yeah, you didn't have this elite pass rushing class, I think, and this year you kind of did.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting. I'm not saying he can't. But the deck is stacked against him. Let's put it that way. If we had to pick who has the best chance of getting a contract extension, I've said this before, I'll say it again, it's Kyle Duggar. He's the best, and the 3 players that are at the top list are Duggar, Uche, and Onwenu. He plays the most expensive position. He'd be the hardest player to replace. I think he's the best of those 3 players. He's probably the most bought into the system of those 3 players. Everything points me towards it being Kyle Duggar, as if one of those guys gets an extension, it being him.
And it's a good point to bring up those 2. It was Highsmith in Pittsburgh, and I'm going to forget the other one. This guy in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
They got contracts that are pretty – you could make a case are on par for what Josh Uche would be looking like as, production-wise. And I think Highsmith was even the same draft as Uche, and kind of a similar scenario playing across from an elite rusher, TJ Watt, Matt Judon. And I believe his deal was 14 million a year. So I don't see
about that.
I don't see the Patriots giving that to Uche because they don't view him really as a 3-down player, right? And if a team's paying him that much money, it's probably going to be in a 3-down role. So
I would say the 3-down player thing and the inconsistency.
Yeah.
They like players who are consistent. In Uche, again, we talked about this. This is a prove-it year for him because there's the first, whatever it is, I think 28 games of his career when he had 3 sacks, and then the last 10 when he had 11 and a half. And which player really is he? That's what we're going to figure out this year. This is a good question. In order for the Patriots to have a successful season, which position group or groups will have to outperform their current expectations?
Tackle.
3 quickly come to mind, and I think it's kind of no doubt. Tackle, massively. Wide receiver. I don't know that they have to. If one of these do, either tackle or wide receiver has to. I don't know that both have to for it to be a successful season, which to me means they make the playoffs. But one of them definitely does. And depending on who you ask, quarterback. I think the general consensus is Mac gets back to about the player he was his rookie year, which if I think he can be that player for them to have a successful season, but some people are expecting a lot less. So maybe Mac, depending on who you ask, but tackle, receiver, that's what it is. It's been that for 3 years, 4 years now. That's been the position that's bit. Those are the positions that have bit them. So that's who I have needing to step up.
Yep, I completely agree there.
Although I guess you could kind of twist this question and say, well, the expectation for the pass rushers is very high. What if both Judon and Uche are like sack per game players? Would that be enough? If the two of those guys combine for, call it 30 sacks.
Enough to like carry a tackle and wide receiver group that just bottom out.
Or even just is as expected, which I guess for tackles is bottoming out. But
I think
is like average, is what we expect.
I think you'd kind of be where you were last year, just going right down to the wire to a playoff spot there, just because just all these quarterbacks, they have to, like, they're going to have to put up points, right? And even if these...
Well, the idea being here, if Uche and Judon, and we'll throw Barmore in there too, just like the pass rush as a whole, if they are that good, the expectation right now is that they're a top 3. Were you the one, or was I still on with Mike, who said that they're top 5 unit in the league?
No, that was me. Top 5
pass rush. Yeah. All right. So let's say they end up being number 1, right? Those quarterbacks are going to be on their back a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Those quarterbacks are going to have tough days. Or like, what if, and it's just for the sake of argument, like, it's kind of, I just having fun with the question. What if the defensive backs are better than we expect? What if Kyle Duggar does get, some people have him as a dark horse for like the most improved player in All Pro. What if Kyle Duggar's a definitive All Pro? What if, and Christian Gonzalez is the defensive rookie of the year? Like, what would that mean? What would that do for their ceiling? That might actually do more than the pass rusher one. I'm kind of thinking this out in real time here.
Yeah, I think.
Not that I think these things are going to happen, but.
Yeah, because if the secondary outperforms their current expectations, but then you just have the pass rush meet their expectations, that would probably be the biggest thing that could happen to raise the defensive ceiling, I'd say. So.
Okay. Do you think that gets them in the playoffs if the offense is, better than it was last year, but kind of what we expect with just Bill O'Brien and Adrian Clemson?
I think that could get them there. I think that could squeak them in.
Okay. Different take on the question. I think you hear this and everybody assumes like, who are the bad ones that could rise up? But no, what if just like the really good players are even better and they carry those other players? It has been a while since we've done a show. Thoughts on the updated coaching staff on the website? I would not read too much into Joe Judge being listed under defense. I think that's just a formality. Everything we saw this spring was him working with special teams. The NFL itself defined him as a special teams coach when they had that report about the missed practices. I don't love the assistant head coach title. I know why he has it. They don't want to demote Joe Judge. And if you make Cam Accord. And if you make Joe Judge the special teams coach and Accord's a special teams coordinator, it's very clear what happened. So you put him on defense, you give him a vague title. It lets everybody save face. I think that's really all it is.
Yeah.
I think it's just trying to hide the fact that Cam Accord got demoted without changing his title. Besides that, no new title for Gerard Mayo, certainly interesting. And I'll tell you this, they love them some Ross Douglas. And from everybody I talk to down there and the other understanding I get, it's respect well earned. He's come in and just busted his ass and been great. I think he got here in 2020. What do I want to say? 2019. He hasn't been here that long.
2020.
But
so, yeah.
Okay. He doesn't have the assistant coach title anymore. He is the wide receivers coach, as is Troy Brown. So they're technically, I guess, co-wide receivers coaches, but a little bump for him, which I think is notable because that's a guy they really like him and DeMarcus Covington, I think, on each side of the ball. Those are the next guys. And I know Covington's already sort of been in a bigger role. You know, he's been in the spotlight. He did interview for some jobs back in the spring, but those are two guys I think that they're very high on their staff.
Because they let Douglas, was he quarterbacks and offensive coordinator at the Shrine Bowl?
Yeah.
He had an elevated role there.
Yeah,
so
he was,
kind of that guy. And then Evan Rothstein in quarterbacks after he was like a vague offensive assistant last year working with the quarterback.
He was the assistant quarterbacks coach last year too. He had that vague title 2 years ago. The first year he got here, it was like research assistant something.
Yeah.
he was Matt Patricia's Ernie Adams in Detroit. Yeah, exactly. He was like the nerd. And now he's the quarterbacks coach. Like, I don't totally understand that one, but he's done enough now that it's all right, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but with titles, I don't know. I just don't like to read too much into it. With this, like the Joe Judge on the defense, I just don't think it's that big of a deal on special teams, which is what we saw. So
yeah, if we get out there and he's like right there with Gerard Mayo calling out defensive signals tomorrow, I'll be a little more worried about that. But again, I really feel like him being listed with the defense is just a formality.
Yeah.
What else do we got here? Any chance the Patriots trade for Patterson, or could they see if the Falcons are willing to move on from him? The Falcons are not going to move on from Cordell Patterson. They love him, and they just extended him last year. He is a core part of their team. He's an important voice in the locker room. I don't think, unless there was a trade rumor today I missed or something, like from my understanding, he is a big part of what they're doing there. He's not going anywhere.
Yep. He's a good compliment to Bijan down there, so.
Yeah, he really is. I think he also might go back to playing some more wide receiver type stuff too.
Yeah, I could see that.
If the Patriots get blown out in the opener and the offense looks weak, will the fans panic? Fans will panic if they win the opener because they didn't win it by enough. That's just how Patriots fans are. I think no matter what happens, there's going to be some level of panic. Even if it has to be, Tom Brady and Robert Kraft's handshake only lasted 3 seconds, not 4 seconds. Does that mean he's coming out of retirement to join the Jets? And him and Rodgers are going to start a 2-quarterback offense, and they're going to play the Patriots for the rest of the schedule and just beat the crap out of them every game? Like, no matter what happens, there's going to be a panic. I wouldn't worry too. There's a lot that is hard to predict between now and the start of the season. One thing I can tell you is Patriots fans will panic, and there will be strong reactions to the season opener no matter what happens.
Oh, yeah. They love to panic.
I don't know. Is this who's Rudy? Am I missing something? Is this like a movie joke or?
I think that's a joke.
Okay. No, I don't think Rudy will be out there. He was offsides. They don't want players who commit penalties. He was offsides. You know that, right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Do we think Gerard Mayo turned down interviews because Bill told him he was no, I don't want to. I thought that was something else. I thought that said, do we think Gerard Mayo turned down interviews because Bill told him he's the next guy? They can't technically do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that message was conveyed in so many words.
A wink, wink, something along those lines.
Yeah, he had to get something because he even said, I think it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, he was asked about it. He interviewed for a job. I don't remember which team it was at the time, but they were like in a really dumpster fire position, like really bad spot.
Carolina.
And he was asked about it. And he was like,
was in the Carolina?
No, this was a couple years ago.
Oh, okay.
It might have been the Colts. And he said something along the lines of basically, if you're working in coaching, your dream is to coach an NFL team. You're not going to pass that up because the team isn't good enough. You believe in yourself to turn the team around. So I think they had to do something significant in order to get him back here. And it clearly wasn't a title. I don't know if it's been reported if there was a financial element to it. There might have been. There must have been, I would think.
He did say when he met.
They did something to keep him here.
When he met with us back like in April around the draft, he got to sit in on some of the like coaching meeting, like the hiring meetings, and didn't even say he went out to Oregon to see like Gonzalez or meet with Gonzalez. So a little more role over there, but I'm guessing there was something financial in there as well, to incentivize him to stay. But maybe kind of that Josh McDaniels of like, hey, I'm going to take you under my wing here and teach you how to be a coach. And then maybe we'll give you a little pay bump and then a wink, wink that you're the next one. But
All right, I'm going to pull this one up. It's probably the last one we'll do, then we'll get to the Boston Sports Minute. Thoughts on Courtland Sutton trade rumors? Where are these Courtland Sutton trade rumors? The only thing I've heard of them is people tweeting at me that there are Courtland Sutton trade rumors.
It was one of those like weird fake Twitter accounts that just randomly think, and then people kind of
okay, so they're not real. They're not real. If the Broncos want a second-round pick for Courtland Sutton, I'd call him back and say, we'll give you 2 seconds for Jerry Jeudy. That's the guy I want from the Broncos.
Yep.
If they're trading a wide receiver, that's the guy I'm going to get. And if it costs a little more, it costs a little more, so be it.
Yep.
So that's where I'm at. Like, Sutton's good and he can play. I'm not saying he can't, but Jerry Jeudy's what this team needs. Period. Full stop. All right, let's dig into this because it was a busy day in Boston.
Very busy day. Should
we just go chronologically?
Sure. Or who are you getting yelled at about?
We'll do that last.
Is that the Red Sox?
That's the Red Sox.
Okay.
Patrice Bergeron, legend. Absolute legend. Unbelievable career. He probably should have 1 or 2 more cups. I don't think that's his fault. There were other people that came up short, but man, it's a bummer he only got 1 cup because he should have multiple. First ballot Hall of Famer, numbers going right up, all of that. It is going to be really interesting to see what the Bruins do from here because they need bodies at this point. They got to fill out their roster. They don't have a ton of cap space to do it. I assume Marchand becomes the captain, but you lose Chara and Bergeron that quickly and Krejci, and it opens up a little bit of a leadership void. And I learned this over the weekend. This is very interesting. I didn't know. The diehard Bruins fans probably knew this. I apologize for being late to the party. That 15 or that first round pick that they gave to Detroit, which Ottawa now has after another trade, is top 10 protected.
Yep.
So if you sell off some pieces, you could add picks and then potentially get your first round pick back. I know the Bruins don't want to tank. I know they want to make the playoffs every year. I get it. But I don't think they don't need to be the Houston Astros where they're brutal for years. I think they can take 1 year, hit reset on the cap, acquire some draft picks, and they do still have a young core. They've got McAvoy. They've got Lindholm. They've got obviously Wright. They've got a couple kids in the minors who are just about ready. Support for that group and that group with things you can get now. So I think if they start off slow, start selling the guys on the 1 year deals, some of the guys they traded for this offseason, and hit that reset button and really try to build this thing up. Because I think they could get back to being like a top 3 team in the league very quickly if they take this year and throw it to the side. Now, I know it's the centennial year and they want to be great and all of that, but I just don't see the path to them being contenders this year. And I see a very clear path to them accruing a ton of assets to build the roster back up very quickly. And that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, especially because they'll have like $35-40 million in cap space next year too. So they could get assets and then just go pay a top 6 center base. But yeah, it'll be, Bergeron, obviously, you said it, legend, very emotional. He's leaving him all childhood. That video they put out where the players were talking about him, that was sad. McAvoy had a good line, we'll keep the leadership going for you. So maybe he's in consideration for the captaincy here, but I still struggle to see how they're just gonna like bottom out because they still have, Pasta, DeBrus, they still have McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, and the goaltending duo should be back. But if it's not like, and I agree, sell-offs, a guy like Grizzly who's a UFA at the end of the year, some of those one-year guys, and you can get some of those picks back, start replenishing things, and then you space next year, and you're right back into it. And especially, I know their farm system is widely viewed as one of the worst. But they still have some intriguing guys there. Matthew Poitras, center, I'm really high on. I think he's going to be good. Not this year. He's probably OHL, but they have some intriguing guys.
But some of those and some of those guys who are further along, like a Fabian Lysell, right? If you sell off some pieces, you get to see them this year, and you get to kind of figure out what they are, and that could be interesting as well. So, but again, Patrice Bergeron, unbelievable career. Also, to bring it back to the Patriots for a second, I don't think Krejci's officially retired yet. Are we just assuming that happened? Is there going to be an announcement? I don't know, but for all intents and purposes, let's just assume David Krejci's retiring. Matthew Slater now the longest tenured athlete in Boston sports. Now, or he will be once Krejci announces his retirement. So has been the longest tenured Patriot since Tom Brady left a couple years ago. And now he's at the top of the list for the whole city. And I forget who's second. I tweeted out earlier today. A couple other guys moving surprisingly quickly up that list. I had it in front of me earlier. I know David Pasternak's getting up there. David Andrews is getting up there. Here it is. Okay, so Slater's going to be number 1. Marshawn's going to be number 2. David Pasternak will be the 3rd longest tenured athlete in Boston sports if Krejci retires. Then you'd have David Andrews and Joe Cardona, who debuted the same day. Then Jalen Brown, Matt Grizzlick, Chris Sale. And then you round out the top 10 there. You're looking at Rafael Devers, Dietrich Wise, Lawrence Guy, James Ferentz all debuted the same day. And then Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's right on the fringe of that top 10. He's getting there. He's in the top 15, longest tenured in the city. So that happened quick.
Easy list.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
All right. Speaking of the Celtics, Jalen Brown, max extension finally got done. I'm not going to freak out that it's the biggest contract in NBA history. That's just the way the max extension works. It's a percentage of the cap. The cap goes up every year. So every year, the super max is more than the year before it. This is just what it was always going to be. Next year, he'll no longer be the highest paid player in NBA history. It'll be Jason Tatum. They got the 5th year without the option. There is the trade kicker. Like, this is a deal set up for him to stay. So that's encouraging. But now it's on. The window's on. 2-3 years. I don't think we can do can you set up the Celtics to win 4 titles, to win 5 titles? We got to put that aside for a second. Just get one. Just get one with this core. Don't miss this window. And then you can worry about winning multiple. But they've got to get it done this year.
Yep.
Or call it in the next 2 years. But I really think
if you get one, no one cares about the contract anymore, right? And like, I didn't see another path. You weren't going to trade him for something that was better than Jalen Brown or whatever that package would have been. And you couldn't just let him walk. So you kind of had to bring, it is set up so he can stay. But yeah, you have 2 or 3 years of this while he enters his prime here, quote unquote, age-wise. And then if it's not working there, you're going to have to, that's when you kind of have to blow it up here and maybe shake up this core. But it's up to them, which is how it should be. Your 2 stars. If they can't do it, then you got to get rid of one. So,
yeah.
But I was happy that got done.
Yeah. Glad it got done. And enough of the delay. I was getting unoptimistic, honestly, with all the talk about optimism. I was like, what the hell's going on here? But
it was weird.
That's done. And then it was a little weird. It was a little weird. Finally, the Boston Red Sox made a trade today. They traded Kike Hernandez to the Dodgers. Good riddance. He's a super fun player in 2021, but not a shortstop. And this is what I'm getting attacked for on Twitter, Brian. I tweeted this. And look, it's my own fault for wording it this way. I tweeted the top 4 shortstops for the Red Sox this year after losing Xander Bogaerts. Trevor Story, DNP due to injury. Alberto Mondesi, DNP due to injury. Kike Hernandez, traded to clear out of Rob Chang, missed 2.5 months due to injury. The point was not like, oh, hey, they should have kept Xander Bogaerts. I understand why they let him go. It's my own fault for putting Xander Bogaerts in there and making it about him. The point is, knowing they were losing their starting shortstop, the Red Sox did not adequately prepare to staff the position this season. Story has had elbow injuries going back to Colorado. He got his surgery in January. They then traded a week later for Adalberto Mondesi, who was coming off a torn ACL, who you knew couldn't miss time. I don't think anybody expected him to miss this much time, but you knew could miss time. Kike Hernandez had played less than 50 games in his career at shortstop. I know he's a utility player, but that was more of a plug-and-play thing, not an everyday thing. And then you were in the group of Yu Chang, who doesn't have a ton of major league experience, Pablo Sandoval, who the A's didn't want, who they claimed off waivers from the A's, et cetera, et cetera. But it has nothing to do with Xander. I understand. I wouldn't have let Xander go, but I understand why they let Xander go. I get it. But you can't sit here and tell me that they were adequately prepared for his departure, because they weren't. And I know Marcelo Mayer's coming. Great. And Trevor Story's even coming back in a couple of weeks. We're already 4 months into this thing. You don't just get to throw the 4 months away. Oh, but they're only 2 games out of a playoff spot. Oh, but they're better than they were last year. Great. They could be even better. They could be in a playoff spot. And I frankly, I don't care about last year. Last year's last year. The goal is not to be better than last year. The goal is to make the playoffs and try to win a World Series. So I don't want to hear that, oh, well, they're better than they were last year. And, oh, they're better than the Padres who ended up getting Xander. I don't care. That's not the point. And again, it's my own fault for putting Xander Bogaerts in that tweet. The point is, it's the most important position on the diamond besides pitcher, and they didn't have major league talent to staff it. And they could have. They very easily could have. And maybe, yes, they'll get Trevor Story back for a run here, and that's great. But they're playing catch-up now. They're not in a playoff spot as we, approach August. If they had a real shortstop this year, how many games did they lose because Kike Hernandez was throwing the ball into the dugout, or because they had to put guys out there for their defense who couldn't hit? 1 game, 2 games? Well, if it's 2 games, then boom, they're a playoff team right now. That's my frustration with the Red Sox, that it got to this point at shortstop.
Yep. I get it. Kike was so fun in that 21 postseason. It was tough to see him have this year. How much of that was moving the shortstop time? That's up for debate. But yeah, I mean, it's encouraging. They're 2 games out of the playoffs, having this rotating door out. But yeah, maybe if they had a major league body there that could play it, five times a week, you want to call it, then maybe they are in that, because they're not throwing the ball in the dirt every other inning there. So encouraging, but disappointing at the same time if you kind of play like that. But we'll see. I'm glad they're making some moves here, and Trevor Story coming back. And I'm not even going to say Chris knows what's going on with Chris Sale. I mean, he threw a pen, I think, but you just don't want to rely on him. But I like what they're doing. I like the core. I've heard Verdugo might be a guy who gets moved, which would kind of be a weird move.
That would be interesting. I feel like that's more of a thing in this offseason where you go to arbitration with him, get him, and then move him. I think they're going to want his bat. I think Duvall's the guy that goes. They do have to trade an outfielder, but I think it's Duvall.
Stacked.
Yeah, because they still need pitching again. I'd love for them to trade for a shortstop. I don't think they will, because I don't know how Trevor Story's elbow is going to hold up. But I will say, though, too, to Bloom, before I get accused of just bashing Bloom for no reason, he got the Dodgers' 25th best prospect for Kike Hernandez, which isn't nothing. Which isn't great, but it's also not nothing. I thought they were going to DFA Kike. And they got a guy who's pitched in the majors this year, could maybe give them some innings out of the bullpen, even just eat innings, which they need at this point. So I'll give him that. That's a good return for a guy that is at absolute rock bottom in terms of his value.
Yeah. He does really good on returning value in most of his trades, I would say.
Yeah, just not the big ones.
The Mookie one.
The small ones, yeah. No, he'll deal he'll deal the third best reliever in Worcester and get a guy that can actually kind of play a little bit as a third or fourth arm in the bullpen. Just don't have to trade Mookie Betts.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, we don't have to rehash Mookie, but
right.
Anything else Boston sports wise you had to get off your chest from a busy day?
I mean, day's not over, but I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So we'll say, well, they're playing the Braves tonight, who are the best team in baseball. So that'll be the 2-game series. It's gonna be telling.
Yep. John Schreiber back starting tonight, so
yeah,
we'll see. And then the greatest reliever of all time comes after this, so we'll see what happens there. But I think that'll do it for us here tonight. We will be back throughout the week to recap training camp as it comes and goes. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and turn your Patriots Press Pass notifications on so you do know when we go live. But until then, you can follow Alex on Twitter or X or whatever the hell we're calling it these days, at @RealAlexBarth. Go stuff at 985thesportshub.com. You can follow me on Twitter at @IamBrianHines and go read all my stuff at patspulpit.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you from training camp tomorrow.